What's up, scholars? Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to talk about my top 10 saddest moments in One Piece. So these are the top 10 moments where I was emotionally distraught, which happens a lot to me in One Piece, granted. But these 10 moments are moments that hit me harder than anything else in the series. And that's saying a lot. So, of course, these are my opinions because everybody is going to have their own opinion on what moments hit them the hardest. We're not all going to be the same. Maybe some of my moments are similar to yours. Maybe they're ranked a little bit differently. But these are my personal top 10 moments of just the saddest moments in One Piece. So we're going to start at number 10 and work our way up to number 1. And we're just going to talk about them a little bit and why they hit me so hard. It's going to be a fun little video. So excited to revisit all the pain that One Piece has brought me. So let's go ahead and get into it with number 10. And that is Otohime's death from Fishman Island. Otohime, her backstory in Fishman Island, just everything that she did, everything that she stood for, her personality, her character, everything, I was just so drawn to, I was so attached to. And then everything with Vanderdecker, whatever his name was, everything with that, and then the whole thing with Shirahoshi and all of her children and her husband, like King Neptune's reaction to her, everything that she stood for, and then to be killed at the end, despite everything, despite being killed by these people that she was fighting for, being killed by them in the end, or under pretense of being killed by them at the end, even with all the good that she did. And we saw her effect of, I should have put this beforehand, but obviously this is spoilers, like obvious spoilers for One Piece. If you haven't caught up to current One Piece, this is going to be a lot of spoilers for you, so I guess I should have said that in advance. Sorry about that. But up to some of the most current points in One Piece, we have seen Otohime's influence on people and how it is affecting others. And it makes her death hurt so much, and the fact that she was smiling with her children around her and saying the sun will shine on us again, and then her children reacting to that, oh my gosh, Fukaboshi and the others having to laugh and make jokes to keep Shirahoshi from crying because her cries would call the Neptunian, like that whole thing was just so gut-wrenching. And it hurt me so much that it just, and her story has stuck with me a lot throughout One Piece. I love Fishman Island to begin with, but her story especially has stuck with me. Amazing moment in character. Number 10 for sure. Moving on to number 9. My number 9 spot goes to Law and Corazon. Corazon and Law's backstory, their history together, hit different. Like, it was so painful. It was so sad and emotional. The bond that they had, the way Corazon went so out of his way for Law, and just everything about their trip of him trying to heal Law, him trying to find a cure for Law, and then stealing the fruit for Law, and then using his silence to keep Law's cries away, like just keep it so that nobody could hear Law crying. And of course Cora saying I love you to Law right before Doflamingo kills him. And yet Corazon hung on as long as he could to give Law time to escape and cry, give him that moment of grief to just really express himself before he was gone for good. Oh my gosh. That was just like cruel and unusual pain from that backstory. It just tore at my heart so much. That backstory still hits hard. It still hits, and I love, 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 love that because it gives so much depth to Law's character, but it also adds depth to Doflamingo's character, but also sets him up as an even better villain because of what he did. It's just so good all the way around in a storytelling sense, but like in an emotional sense, it hits 100%. Terribly sad, but amazing. That leads me to my number 8. This might be a little surprising, but number 8 is Ace's death in Marineford. I read this one live. Y'all saw me cry reading this happen. It hurt a lot. It really, really did. His death hurt so much. And Luffy's reaction to it is what I think hurts more. Because yes, I enjoyed Ace as a character. I liked Ace as an older brother to Luffy. But it's Luffy's reaction. That's what killed it. That's what killed me. In Marineford was Luffy just completely breaking down and just freezing, like being so numb that he couldn't do anything, and he just was so lost in that moment. Oh my gosh. And the reaction of everybody around, and like what that did like for the story, like that major death did so much for the story. We've seen the impact of that death. We've also seen the impact Ace as a character has had on so many different people, and just that death is so weighty in this series, and it deserves a spot in the top 10 in my opinion, and it's just so good. That leads me to number 7, and number 7, 5, 6, and 7 were ones that I kind of juggled back and forth of how much this hurt me, but I think I settled into it a little easier after I thought about it some more. Number 7 is Brook's backstory. First, I mean, him and Laboon's relationship aside, his backstory is still gut-wrenchingly sad. Like the idea that he had to watch everyone die. He had to watch all of his people die. And then he died, came back as a skeleton because it took his soul that long to come and find him again, and then wandered for decades on a ghost ship by himself, losing his mind. And it's just devastating. And the fact that Binks Brew plays in the background, it's devastating. It's just devastating. Because you see Brook, you see him as this like goofy, weird, carefree skeleton who Luffy wants on the crew, and he seems just like a really fun, interesting character, and then it's like, bam, you get knocked in the feels, and it just adds so much to Brook's character, and it adds to his attachment to Luffy, because my goodness is Brook attached to Luffy. Yes, all the Straw Hats are attached to each other, and they're all attached to Luffy, but I think Brook's attachment to Luffy especially hits a little harder after knowing his backstory, because he's dedicating himself to someone again after going through all of that, and knowing that he could lose them all again, and he's still willing to devote himself to Luffy, to believe in Luffy wholeheartedly. I love that. I love it so much, and his backstory is just so sad. It really, really is. And it hits you at like the worst timing, because there hasn't been that many sad moments in Thriller Bark. There weren't really any sad moments in Thriller Bark before that. And then it's like, boom, you get that. Just out of left field, and it hurts. But It doesn't hurt as much as this next one does, which is number 6, which is the goodbye to the Mary. I cried over a boat. That's not even correctly. That's not even correct. I sobbed over a boat. I cried so much that I had a headache, that I couldn't see right, that my eyes were all puffy and red. I did not fare well with that goodbye. That was so painful. It was like losing a crew member. It was like losing one of the Straw Hats. And it hurt so much because of the build-up from Water 7 to Enies Lobby, the issues they were having with the Mary and how it led into all these fights and arguments and decisions that had to be made, and then leaving the Mary behind to go save Robin, and then the Mary showing up to save them, Usopp's attachment to the Mary, and all of their, like, it's all so good. It was so good. I cried so much when the Mary had to go. It was painful, horrendously painful, but not quite as painful, at least to me, as my number 5 spot, which is Usopp versus Luffy in Water 7. When I tell you, I was in pain. I was unwell. I was not in a good I was not in a good state when they were fighting. It broke my heart. Like, it honestly broke my heart. I was in pain watching the lead up to the fight, their arguments, the misunderstandings, the issue over the Mary itself, and Usopp's stance on it, and his feelings and conflicting emotions about how it made him view himself and what he thought that his crew would eventually view him as, and how that boiled over into his argument with Luffy, and Luffy trying to originally downplay it to make the blow a little easier on Usopp, but it just making it seem like he wasn't attached or he wasn't taking things into consideration, and how that ended up blowing over and they weren't seeing eye to eye, and then they started fighting, and that whole fight on the Mary where Sanji had to intervene and hit Luffy. Oh my gosh, that moment means a lot too. And then the actual fight itself, them fighting at night, and Usopp doing a great job, but also Luffy not wanting to hurt Usopp, and like them fighting, and then of course Usopp loses in the end, and then Zoro saying this is what it means to be a captain, Luffy crying, and then it pans to Usopp crying, you see the Mary crying. I was crying so much. I couldn't stand it. I couldn't stand seeing them fight, seeing them squabble. Like, it was like seeing brothers fighting each other, and I just hated every single moment of it. I mean, yes, it led to a lot of great development for both characters in Water 7 and Enies Lobby, and it made for a great reunion, but I hated it so much. So now we're getting into like the top 4. These are very strong moments that hit me just a little bit differently than any of the others on the list. And starting off at number 4, we have Jinbe and Luffy's confrontation and post-war, when Luffy is grieving Ace's loss, and he's screaming, saying, "I'm still so weak." And the self-destructiveness that he goes through, like, he's so injured, he's not supposed to be moving because his body could literally fall apart at any moment, and he's still moving. The way he was so self-destructive and just hurting himself, intentionally hurting himself over and over, until Jinbe, like, he has to come in and just like physically knock Luffy out of it. He has to physically stop Luffy from hurting himself. And then the way Jinbe upholds his promise to Ace, and the way Jinbe talks to Luffy, what, like, the wisdom he bestows upon Luffy in that moment of grief, it gives him something to latch onto, some hope to hold to, and it leads to Luffy crying and counting down his fingers before he says, "I still have my friends." And I'm getting emotional talking about it. But that moment hit me so, it hit me so hard. That moment stuck with me so much. I was crying so hard seeing Luffy in such distress and that disarray. We haven't seen Luffy like that. And since then, we have yet to see Luffy like that again. And I dread the day it happens, if it happens again. I just, that moment stands out to me so much because of just the impact, the characters, and the emotions wrapped up in it. Because I mean that moment sets up a lot, not just for the relationship between Jinbe and Luffy and how they view one another, and how Jinbe, seeing Luffy at his lowest, seeing Luffy at his worst, still decides that this is the man I want to follow, this is the man I want to dedicate my life to again, this is the man I want to join and see become king of the pirates. And Jinbe saw that at Luffy's lowest, and Luffy is able to look at Jinbe as this person of wisdom, as someone who is able to help pull him from the deepest darkness that he's had, to pull him back towards the light, to let him see hope. And that just, I mean, that perspective of Jinbe, just Luffy holds him in the highest regard because of that. And I love that dynamic where instead of Luffy always, I don't know how to say this without it sounding really weird or anything, but Luffy has always been like the sunshine. He's been the sun for all of these characters, and he's still that for Jinbe. He is still very much the sun for Jinbe. But Jinbe was the sun for Luffy in that moment. Like, he was Luffy's son. In a way that none of the other Straw Hats were. Like, yes, none of the Straw Hats were there. They weren't able to help. I get it, and they probably would have done everything they could to help draw Luffy up if they were there. And I'm not saying they wouldn't, but it's just in that moment, that's who Jinbe got to be for Luffy, who has been that for so many other people. And Jinbe got to be that for him. It just, I just love it so much. I do. I really, 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 really do. That's my number 4. Going into the top 3, I wrestled with number 3 and number 2 really hard because one of them is more recent, so it's recently fresh and emotional and on my mind. But another is one that I read a while ago, I watched a while ago, but it still impacts me. So I struggled with these two a little bit, but I tentatively decided on them like this, knowing that they could be interchangeable. But number 3 is Kuma's backstory. Oh my gosh. When you talk about tragedy, when you talk about sad moments in One Piece, you cannot not mention Kuma. Like, the man has suffered through every sort of atrocity and pain that you can think of. Just everything that Kuma has gone through, and the way he's always hoped, he's always run through his life. He's always been running to something. He's always been running to someone. The way he always puts his hope in Nika and has the smile on his face and will do anything he possibly can to protect his daughter. the way he was tricked, the way he was imprisoned more than once in his life, held in captivity as a slave more than once in his life, the physical trauma that he went through, paired with the emotional and psychological and every other thing on top of it, like Kuma just suffered so much. And he willingly did it all for someone else's sake. He willingly put himself through all of that. He didn't mind it. He didn't mind it because it was to protect and help his daughter. It was to protect Bonnie. Kuma's story is the most tragic backstory in One Piece. His childhood and what happened to his mother and father because of the race that he was, the atrocities that he faced in his childhood before he found a place of refuge, of what he thought would be refuge, and then that continued to change. The woman he loved got taken away by the celestial dragons, and he ended up caring for her daughter, adopting her as his own, and doing everything in his power to bring her up healthy, to find a cure so that his daughter could live a happy, healthy life. Dedicating his body to science to save Bonnie. Doing everything in his life, from when he overthrew a kingdom to when he agreed to be Vegapunk's prototype, to everything has always been for someone else. It has always been for someone else's sake, and that just, the self-sacrificial love that he has just astounds me. And I love it. I love him so much. And that goes to the number 2 spot, which is Robin's backstory. Robin's backstory, when we finally get it in Enies Lobby, just broke my heart. It did. I was so sad. Like, her childhood was horrendous. The way her mother left her, she never knew her father, the way she was raised by her aunt who mistreated her and abused her when she met Saul, how Saul was like her first friend and they got along, he taught her how to laugh, and then they end up getting attacked by the government because of the whole lost history aspect to One Piece and how all of that happened, and then she met her mother and then says she was a scholar because she wanted her mother to be proud of her, and then finally getting to hug her mother and hold her hand before her mother sends her away and tells her to live, and Aokiji sparing her life, letting her escape, her crying and trying to laugh as she's on the boat watching Ohara burn. And all of that leading up to the moment from her entire life, she's always been running away from people because they always betray her, they always try to sell her out, so her heart has been hardened so much. And then here's Luffy coming in saying, I'm not running from you, I am not betraying you, I am running to you, I am going to chase you and make sure that you never feel like you have to run away, that you never feel abandoned, that you have a place to call home, that there are people around you who are willing to fight for you no matter what the cost. Luffy having Usopp declare war on the world government by shooting through the flag, leading to Robin's wish finally able to be uttered, and she screams, I want to live. It's one of the best moments in One Piece. One of the best moments in One Piece is Robin's backstory. The emotions I felt, it was a roller coaster, from being hopelessly sad and hurting for Robin to crying tears of like joy, like weeping tears of joy for Luffy standing up for Robin, to declaring war, and then Robin finally saying she wants to live. Just all those emotions just piling up, and seeing Robin now, just seeing her being able to grow and express herself freely, to know that she has people who are never going to turn their back on her. I love it so much. I really, really do. But that leads us to the number one spot. And before we get there, I do have some honorable mentions that didn't quite make the list. So, first honorable mention is Arlong Park, Luffy helped me from Nami. That moment is always just so amazing and gripping, and I love it. I love it every time I see it. It is such a great moment for Nami. It's a great moment for Luffy. I love it dearly. It is incredibly sad and incredibly important to the story. And it deserves a mention, but it's not in my top 10. Another honorable mention is Chopper's backstory. I was a mess when I first read Chopper, or when I first watched Chopper's backstory. I was crying so much. Hero Luke made me cry. Chopper made me cry. Like, that whole situation just made me cry. It was so sad. Sal Body is another good honorable mention, because that was a cruel and unusual punishment for the end of the arc. I was not well. That whole breakdown of Luffy's, of him not being able to save his friend and him beating himself up over it, I was not a fan of that. That hurt a lot. A couple others just real quick. Rebecca from Dressrosa, and I believe it was Kairos, her father, the toy soldier. That whole backstory. Dressrosa in general was incredible, but her and her father's backstory specifically hurt me a lot. Another honorable mention is Fisher Tiger. In the same way that Otohime's backstory really hurt me, his hurt me too. And how he got Koala and brought her to humans again, only to be betrayed by them. Like, I was so sad. Another honorable mention, there's two more. Wano is in mention with the whole enslavement and the smile fruit. That, oh my gosh. The smile fruit and the way, like, the execution was taking place, and Toko just watching her dad die, and she's not able to do anything other but laugh. That was not okay. My other honorable mention kind of goes in line with my top moment. So I'm going to hold off saying it so I can explain properly why it's an honorable mention. My number one saddest One Piece moment is Sanji's backstory. I'm tearing up just thinking about it. I have been partial to Sanji since I met him. I have been partial to him since I met him on Baradier. I have loved this man so much. His initial backstory I thought was super sad. Was Zeph on the island and what Zeph sacrificed for Sanji. Like, that whole debacle was already sad enough. Whole cake? I have not cried in One Piece as much as I did during Sanji's backstory on Whole Cake. The entire incident, his backstory, everything about Whole Cake, I was crying so much. And that is why another honorable mention is Sanji versus Luffy, because I can technically put it into Sanji's backstory and, like, Sanji's situation on Whole Cake, because it all happened on Whole Cake. But it could have been another moment on its own, and it quite possibly could have made top 10, but I didn't put it there because I already had this moment at number 1. Sanji's backstory shattered me. It shattered my heart. How he was treated, the whole situation with his mother, the bullying and abuse that he suffered at the hands of his family, the way he was imprisoned and locked in a dungeon, and the way he was disowned, all because he had human traits, all because he had emotions and human characteristics. They labeled him a failure. His escape, him crying, his sister trying to send him out to sea so that he has a chance for a better life, so that he can live. And the way it all comes back, and that trauma still is affecting him on Whole Cake, and the way he comes back to his family and he feels like he's trapped and he's chained and he doesn't have a choice, which leads him to that fight with Luffy. When Luffy doesn't fight back and Sanji's crying as they're leaving, and Luffy's screaming at him saying, "I can't become king of the pirates without you." Everything about Whole Cake regarding Sanji, the way he's mocked, and even the way Pudding mocks him after he's trying, he's resigned to his fate and he's trying to make the most of it, and he goes to give her these flowers and this picnic basket full of food, and he hears her mocking him. It makes everything about Sanji's character make so much more sense. It truly redefines a lot of situations Sanji finds himself in. It shows why he's so self-sacrificial and why he doesn't really care about his life as much, why he's so willing to put his life on the line for others, and even in the way, like in Punk Hazard, the way he approaches the kids. He ends up helping them, but Nami saying, you can't abandon a child in need, and Sanji just, the whole Cake incident with Sanji regarding his backstory, especially with his mom being the only one that had humanity that he really connected with. I mean, yes, his sister wasn't as bad as his brothers were, but it was his mom. It was his mom that impacted him so much, that gave him this love for cooking, and then his mom dies, and then everything gets worse for him, and after Judge locks him up. And not to mention that when he has to go back to Whole Cake for this wedding that he doesn't agree to, they chain his wrists, and if he tries to take off these chains, they'll explode and destroy his hands, which are used for cooking, and all the implications that has. I mean, just, it's all of it is that's my top moment. Sanji's backstory, that was the most I've ever cried in One Piece. And I already loved Sanji, but it just made me love and respect his character so much more, and it just added so many layers and added so much depth to him. I love it so much. That is my top 10. Those are my top 10 saddest One Piece moments. I would love to hear your top moments down below. If we have similar ones, except they're maybe in different orders, let me know as well. I'd love to see how y'all have viewed all of these sad One Piece moments, because Oda has certainly blessed us with plenty. He has given us plenty of moments to be sad about in One Piece. He's also given us plenty to be happy about. It's a good trade-off. It's fine. But I'd love to hear what your top moments are down below in the comments, so let me know. I'd love to read them. We can chat about them. Other than that, thank you all so much for watching this video. Next week, we'll be doing another video on Spy Family and Dr. Stone, so be prepared for that. We're getting into some good places with those mangas, and I'm really excited for them. And the week after that, One Piece chapters resume, so we'll be getting into the next One Piece chapter. I'm both looking forward to what Oda has cooked for us, but I'm also very scared because we know him by now. I'm scared, but I'm looking forward to it. So the next few weeks are gonna have a lot of great things, so be on the lookout for that. Other than that, thank you all so much for watching this video, and I will see you next time, scholars. Bye!